The
crying
snowstorm
right
howled
now.
through the empty
I am
streets,
done with
the wind
you.
biting at
You
anything
hear
that
me?
dared to move.
I
In the
said
midst
I'm
of this
leaving.
chaos, a small figure huddled in the corner of an alley, her dark skin nearly blending into the night. The little girl's breath came in quick, shallow gasps, visible in the freezing air. She was alone, abandoned, and the cold seemed to swallow her whole. Her clothes, torn and worn, offered no protection against the brutal storm. Every step she took in the snow was slow, deliberate, as if each movement might be her last. Her small hands clutched tightly to the threadbare fabric of her coat, and despite her fear, she refused to cry out. She had learned long ago that the world didn't listen to children, especially not children like her. The sounds of her shivering body were drowned out by the relentless winds. The little girl stumbled, her knee scraping against the icy pavement, but she didn't stop. She couldn't, not now. The night was her only companion, and even it seemed to turn away from her. Just as she reached the edge of the street, a flicker of movement caught her eye. A figure distant at first, then closer, a man walking briskly, his head down against the wind. She felt her heart skip a beat. Maybe, just maybe, he could help. But then doubt crept in. No one ever helped, not really. She had learned that much at a young age. The man walked past her without even noticing. She was invisible to him, just like she had been to everyone else. But then, something changed. The man stopped. He turned, and for the first time that night, he saw her. His eyes widened, his breath catching in his throat. "What are you doing out here?" he asked, his voice gruff yet filled with an urgency that made the girl flinch. She didn't respond right away. She wasn't sure how to. People didn't ask questions they really wanted answers to. She looked up at him, her small face frozen in the cold. "I'm just waiting for the storm to pass," she whispered, her voice barely audible above the wind. The man frowned, his gaze scanning her more carefully now. Her clothes were barely hanging on her, her skin pale and trembling. He took a step toward her, the harsh light from the street lamps casting shadows across his face. "You're freezing," he said, his voice softer now, filled with concern. Without a second thought, he removed his coat and draped it over her small frame. "Come with me," he said, his words carrying a tone of authority. But there was something else too. It was warmth, the kind that had been absent for far too long. As he led her away from the alley, away from the storm, she glanced up at him, her eyes filled with confusion and fear. "Why are you helping me?" she asked, her voice trembling. The man paused for a moment, looking down at her. "Because no one should ever be alone in the cold," he replied quietly, his voice firm. And for the first time that night, the little girl felt a flicker of hope deep inside her chest. The man's coat hung heavily over the little girl's shoulders, its warmth a stark contrast to the cold that had frozen her to the bone just moments before. She walked beside him in silence, her tiny feet struggling to keep up with his long strides. The wind continued to howl around them, but for the first time that night, it seemed a little less menacing. The man didn't speak, but every now and then, he glanced down at her, as if making sure she was still there. His presence was comforting, and yet, it also made her nervous. She wasn't used to people noticing her, let alone caring about her. She had spent so many nights alone, hiding from the world, pretending that she didn't mind being invisible. But now, walking next to this man, she felt something she hadn't felt in a long time: hope. Hope that maybe, just maybe, she wasn't as alone as she thought. "Where are we going?" she asked quietly, her voice breaking the silence between them. The man didn't answer immediately. Instead, he looked ahead, as if considering her question carefully. "Somewhere safe," he said finally, his voice steady. The little girl's heart skipped a beat. Safe? What did that even mean? She had never known safety. She had known fear, hunger, loneliness, and rejection, but never safety. She wasn't sure she believed in it anymore. She looked up at him again, studying his face in the dim light. He looked like someone who had everything in the world: money, power, control. She wondered why he was helping her. Why her? Why now? The man's eyes flickered down to her, sensing her doubt. "You don't have to be afraid," he said softly. "You're not alone anymore." His words were simple, but they felt like a promise. The little girl felt a lump form in her throat. She wanted to believe him, wanted to trust him, But she had been hurt before. People had made promises to her before, only to break them. She had learned the hard way that trust was something that was too easily given and too often shattered. They reached the car, and the man opened the door for her. She hesitated, looking inside. It was warm, the leather seats inviting, but it felt strange to her. She wasn't used to comfort. She wasn't used to people treating her with kindness. "Come on," the man said gently, his hand resting on the car door. "It's okay, get in." Slowly, she climbed into the car, still unsure of what was happening. The man closed the door behind her and walked around to the driver's side. As the car started and pulled away from the alley, the little girl gazed out of the window, watching the snowflakes dance in the air. For a moment, everything felt still. The chaos of the world seemed to fade away, and all that was left was this strange feeling of safety. But even as she began to relax, a nagging question lingered in her mind. Who was this man? Why had he stopped? Why was he helping her? She had no answers, only doubts. The car took them through the city, past streets she had never seen before, into a neighborhood that seemed so different from the one she knew. The houses were big, the lights bright, and the people walking along the sidewalks didn't seem to be afraid of the dark. It was a world that felt so far removed from her own. A world where she didn't belong. They arrived at a large house, surrounded by a tall fence and manicured lawns. The man parked the car and turned off the engine. He looked at her, his expression softening. "We're here," he said quietly. The little girl swallowed hard. This was at the moment that would decide everything. She wasn't sure if she was ready for it. But as she looked at the man, something inside her told her that maybe, just maybe, this could be the beginning of something new. Something different. Something good. The little girl sat in the car, still unsure of what to expect. She stared at the unfamiliar house in front of her, a large, imposing structure that seemed to tower over her small frame. The lights were bright, and she could see the faint glow of a fire burning in the fireplace through the windows. It was warm, inviting, and yet, it felt completely out of place to her. She had spent so many nights in places where warmth was a foreign concept, places where people didn't care if you froze in the cold, places where she was invisible. Now, sitting in the car, her heart raced with a mix of fear and curiosity. Was this real? Could she really be safe here? "Come on." The man's voice broke through her thoughts, soft, yet firm. He opened the car door for her, and for the first time since they left the alley, she allowed herself to move. She stepped out of the car and followed him up the walkway to the front door. Her footsteps were slow, hesitant, but she couldn't bring herself to stop. She had nowhere else to go. The man opened the door and ushered her inside. As soon as they entered, the warmth enveloped her like a blanket, and she couldn't help but shiver. She had almost forgotten what it felt like to be warm. The man took off his coat and hung it up, then turned to her. "You can sit down, make yourself comfortable," he said, his voice gentle. She nodded, unsure of what to do. She didn't know how to act in a place like this. The house was so different from the cold streets she had known. Everything here seemed perfect, neat, and clean. There was no trash scattered on the floor, no broken furniture, no moldy walls. She felt out of place. The man noticed her hesitation. "Would you like something to drink? Water? Maybe some hot chocolate?" he asked. The little girl's stomach growled at the mention of food, but she shook her head. She didn't want to be a burden. "I'm fine," she whispered. "Thank you." The man smiled, though there was a trace of concern in his eyes. He seemed to sense her discomfort, her reluctance to accept anything. "It's okay," he said softly. "You're not a burden. You're safe here." Safe, the word echoed in her mind. She wasn't sure she believed it. She had heard promises like that before, only to have them shattered. But there was something different about the man. He wasn't like the others who had made empty promises to her. He didn't look at her like she was just a charity case. He didn't make her feel small. He made her feel like she mattered. The little girl glanced around the room. It was cozy, with a soft rug on the floor and a fireplace that crackled gently. The walls were lined with bookshelves, filled with thick volumes of books she could never afford. She felt out of place, like an intruder in a world that wasn't meant for her. She sat on the edge of the couch, her hands folded tightly in her lap, unsure of what to say or do. The man sat down beside her, his gaze never leaving her face. He didn't speak at first, allowing her to settle in, to take in the strange but safe surroundings. After a moment, he spoke, his voice low and comforting. "I know this is all new for you," he said. "But you're safe now. No one's going to hurt you here." She wanted to believe him, but the walls she had built around herself over the years didn't come down so easily. She had learned the hard way that trust wasn't something you could just give away. It had to be earned. And right now, she wasn't sure if she was ready to give that trust to anyone, not even him. She swallowed hard, her eyes darting around the room. "What happens now?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. The man looked at her, his expression softening. "Now, we figure things out. I'm not sure what you've been through, but we'll take it one step at a time. You don't have to worry about anything. You'll be taken care of here." The little girl nodded slowly, but doubt still lingered in her mind. How could things change so quickly? How could she go from the freezing streets to this warm house in just a matter of hours? It felt like a dream, one she wasn't sure she was ready to wake up from. As the man stood up to leave the room, he paused for a moment, looking back at her. "If you need anything, just let me know," he said before disappearing down the hallway. The little girl sat there, her heart heavy with a mix of emotions. She didn't know what the future held, but for the first time in a long time, she allowed herself to hope. The room was quiet, the only sound the soft crackling of the fire in the corner. The little girl sat on the couch, her body tense, her hands still folded tightly in her lap. She was trying to adjust to the strange new world she had found herself in. The man had gone to check something, but he had promised he would return. She had no idea what time it was or what to expect next. The house was so different from the streets she knew, so different from the broken places she had slept in. There was food here, warmth, safety, things she hadn't thought possible for someone like her. But as she sat there, her mind raced with questions. Why was he helping her? Why had he stopped that night in the snowstorm? Was this some sort of trap? The doubts crept back in like a shadow, and her heart began to race. She wasn't used to this kind of kindness, and she wasn't sure how to handle it. A soft knock at the door broke her thoughts. She flinched, her eyes darting toward it, but the man's voice came through first, calm and reassuring. "Come in," he said. The door creaked open, and in walked another man, tall, with dark hair and a serious look on his face. The little girl instinctively shrank back, but the first man, the one who had brought her here, stepped forward. "It's okay," he said, turning to her. "This is Ethan. He's a family friend. He's just going to ask a few questions. Nothing to worry about." Ethan looked at her with a curious expression, but there was no judgment in his eyes. Just concern. He was holding a file in his hand, and as he sat down across from her, he opened it slowly. "I'm sorry to disturb you," he began, his voice calm, "but we need to know how you ended up out there. We want to help you, but we need to understand what's happened to you." The little girl hesitated. She didn't want to talk about it, didn't want to remember the cold, the hunger, the loneliness, but something in Ethan's voice made her feel like it was okay to say something. So, she took a deep breath and began. I was living with my aunt," she said, her voice shaking slightly, "but she doesn't take care of me. She doesn't care." She paused, looking down at her hands. "I don't know where my mom is. She left a long time ago." The room was silent for a moment, the weight of her words hanging in the air. Ethan didn't speak right away. He just looked at her, his expression softening. The man who had brought her here, he had been watching her closely the entire time, but now he knelt beside her. "You're safe now," he said again, his voice quiet but firm. "No one is going to hurt you. We'll take care of everything." The little girl didn't look up. She wasn't sure she believed him, but she didn't want to say anything more. She just nodded, her hands still tightly clasped in her lap. "We just need to make sure you're okay," Ethan said, his voice gentle. "We'll help you find your mom, if that's what you want. We can get you settled into a school, get you the help you need. You're not alone anymore." She finally looked up at him, her eyes wide with uncertainty. "You'll help me?" she whispered. Ethan nodded. "Of course we will. You have a lot of people who want to help you now. You're not alone." The man who had brought her here, the one who had promised her safety, stood up and stepped back. "I'll go make sure everything is set up," he said quietly. "I'll be right back." As he walked out of the room, the little girl sat there, trying to process everything. She wanted to believe them. She wanted to believe that things could be different now. That maybe, just maybe, she could have a future that didn't involve hiding, running, or being invisible. But as the silence filled the room once more, she couldn't shake the feeling that this was all too good to be true, that it was all just another lie, another broken promise. She was scared, scared to trust again, scared to hope. But for the first time in a long time, she allowed herself to feel something she hadn't felt in years. A small, fragile spark of hope. The next few days felt like a blur. The little girl, whose name was Maya, was adjusting to a life that seemed so strange and foreign. Every day, the man who had helped her, Ethan, took her to new places, introduced her to new people, and promised her that everything would be okay. But still, doubts lingered in her mind. Was this really real? Could she really trust these people? Or was it just another moment of fleeting kindness that would eventually fade? She hadn't allowed herself to trust anyone in a long time, and it was hard to let that guard down now. Ethan had taken her to the doctor, and then to a school where she was placed into a warm classroom filled with children who seemed to have everything she had never had: love, attention, care. Maya sat quietly in the back of the classroom, trying to adjust to the new routine, but she still felt like an outsider. She didn't know how to interact with the other kids, and the idea of making friends felt almost impossible. At night, when she lay in her new bed, she often stared at the ceiling, wondering if tomorrow would be another day where everything felt like a dream. It wasn't that she didn't appreciate the kindness. She just couldn't help but wonder when the world would prove her right again, when it would remind her that no one stayed, no one really cared. But Ethan was persistent. Every day, he would check in with her, ask if she needed anything, and offer a kind word when she seemed down. One afternoon, as they sat in the living room, Ethan asked her, "Maya, do you remember where you were before you came here? Do you remember your family?" Maya's eyes darted to the floor, her fingers fidgeting nervously. She knew he wasn't asking to hurt her, he just wanted to help. But the question stirred up memories that she wasn't ready to confront. "I don't know," she whispered, barely audible. "I don't know where my mom is, or where I'm supposed to go." Ethan's voice softened, but there was a certain weight to it. "Maya, you're not alone. You have a place here. And if you ever want to find your family, we'll do everything we can to help you." Maya swallowed hard, feeling the lump in her throat. For a moment, she just sat there, silent. The truth was, she hadn't thought about her mom in a long time. She had buried those thoughts deep inside, because thinking about her mother only made the pain worse. Her mother had left when she was too young to remember the details, but Maya remembered enough. She remembered the pain, the abandonment. She remembered feeling like she was never enough, that no one ever really wanted her. She had learned to survive, to keep going, even when it felt like the world had forgotten her. But now, sitting in Ethan's living room, a part of her was starting to believe that maybe she didn't have to keep surviving alone. Maybe, just maybe, she could find the peace and safety she had longed for. "You don't have to go through this alone," Ethan said again, his voice firm but gentle. "I know it's hard to trust people, but I'm here for you, Maya. We're going to figure this out together." The sincerity in his voice caught Maya off guard, and for the first time since she had arrived, she allowed herself to feel something different, something she hadn't felt in years: hope. "Thank you," she whispered, the words barely escaping her lips. "Thank you for helping me." Ethan smiled, and for a moment, the weight of the world seemed to lift from Maya's shoulders. She wasn't alone anymore. She didn't have all the answers, and she didn't know what the future held, but she knew one thing: she had a chance now. A chance to heal, to belong, and maybe even to find her family again. That night, as she lay in bed, Maya finally allowed herself to sleep without worrying about what might happen next. For the first time in a long time, she felt like she was safe. And that was a feeling she had almost forgotten existed. Days passed, and Maya continued to adjust to the life she had been given. The house was warm, filled with light, and every meal felt like a luxury compared to the scraps she had once eaten. Yet, despite the kindness she was shown, there was a gnawing feeling in her heart that she couldn't shake. She had always been told that things would get better, that life would be different, but she had never experienced it for long. The kindness she was receiving now was new, but what if it, too, would disappear like everything else? The promise of safety felt real, but Maya had learned that promises could break just as easily as hearts. Ethan, who had become more than just a kind stranger to her, noticed the distance in her eyes. She was always polite, always thanked him for his care, but he could see she was holding back. He knew that trust wasn't something you could just give away, and Maya had learned that the hard way. One afternoon, Ethan asked if she wanted to meet with someone who could help her find her mother. He explained that there was a team, social workers and people who could make sure Maya was in a place that could help her heal. Maya wasn't sure. She hadn't spoken of her mother in days, and the thought of finding her brought a mixture of hope and fear. What if she was never found? What if her mother didn't want to be found? The confusion was overwhelming. "Are you sure?" Maya asked softly, not meeting Ethan's eyes. "What if I can't find her? What if she's not there anymore?" Ethan paused, sitting beside her. "Maya, finding your mother is one step, but no matter what happens, we'll make sure you're safe. This isn't about just finding someone. It's about giving you the chance to heal, to have a future." Maya looked up at him, her face softening for a moment. She had never thought about a future, not one that was hers, anyway. The days ahead seemed blurry, and part of her didn't know if she could face them, but Ethan's words settled deep inside her. For the first time in a long while, she allowed herself to think about the possibility of something better. The next morning, they met with the social worker. She was kind, patient, and her eyes were filled with understanding. She asked Maya questions about her past, about what she wanted, and about what her future might look like. Maya answered, hesitantly at first, unsure of how to voice the tangled emotions inside her. But the more she spoke, the more she realized that maybe it was time to stop running from the truth. The social worker told her that they would help with the search for her mother, but more importantly, they would make sure she had the care and support she needed in the meantime. Maya's heart pounded as the reality of the situation sank in. She wasn't just here because she had nowhere else to go. She was here because there was a chance, a real chance. Ethan stayed with her through the whole process, offering quiet support, never pushing, just being there. It was clear that he cared, but it was also clear that he understood Maya's need to take things at her own pace. That afternoon, as they left the building, Ethan turned to her with a smile. "How do you feel about everything?" he asked. Maya looked up at him, her face softening. She didn't know how to explain it, the emotions swirling inside her, but she nodded slowly. "I feel different," she said quietly. "Like maybe there's hope." Ethan smiled warmly. "That's all I want for you, Maya. Hope, and the chance to live the life you deserve." The car ride home was quiet, but it was a different kind of silence. It wasn't heavy or filled with doubt. It was the kind of silence that comes with new beginnings, the kind that allows room for change. As they pulled into the driveway, Maya looked at the house in front of her. She didn't know what the future held, but for the first time, she felt like she could face it. The door opened, and she stepped out, a small but real sense of peace settling in her chest. She was here now, and that was enough. For the first time in her life, she wasn't just surviving. She was living. Days went by, and Maya found herself adjusting to the rhythm of a life she had never known. The house had become a place of stability, and with each passing day, the shadows of doubt that had once filled her mind began to fade. Ethan continued to support her, offering her guidance, but always giving her the space she needed. She had never experienced such gentleness before, and it was both comforting and unsettling. There was still a part of her that didn't believe she deserved this life. A part of her that feared the ground would fall out from under her once again. But each time she felt that fear creeping in, she reminded herself of the promise that had been made to give her hope and a future. But one afternoon, everything changed. Ethan had left for a short meeting, and Maya was left alone in the house. She was used to being alone, but now, it felt different. The quiet felt heavy, and her thoughts were louder than ever. She sat on the couch, staring at the wall, thinking about her mother. It had been days since they had started the search, but there were still no answers. The uncertainty weighed on her. Would she ever find her mother? What would she do if she didn't? Her hands trembled slightly as she gripped the edge of the couch. The door creaked open, and Maya looked up, startled. Ethan stood in the doorway, his expression serious. "Maya, we need to talk," he said softly. Her heart skipped a beat, and she stood up, feeling a sudden wave of anxiety. "What's wrong?" she asked, her voice unsteady. Ethan stepped into the room, holding a piece of paper in his hand. "I've received some information about your mother," he began, his voice calm, though Maya could sense the weight behind his words. "The social workers found something. They found her location." Maya's breath caught in her throat. For a moment, the world seemed to stop. "Where is she?" Maya whispered, barely able to speak. Ethan looked at her, his eyes full of compassion. "She's in a shelter in another city," he said, his voice gentle. "She's alive, Maya." Maya's heart raced. Her mind was reeling, a mixture of hope and fear crashing through her. Her mother was alive? After all these years, after all the pain, her mother was still out there? She felt a lump in her throat and blinked rapidly, trying to push back the tears that threatened to overwhelm her. "Do you want to go see her?" Ethan asked, his voice soft, as if giving her the choice. Maya hesitated. The thought of seeing her mother again brought back so many memories of abandonment, of loss. She wasn't sure if she was ready to face the woman who had left her behind. But something deep inside her told her that this was the moment that could change everything. "I don't know," she said quietly, her voice trembling. "I don't know if I can do it." Ethan nodded, understanding. "You don't have to do anything you're not ready for. But just know, we can help you through this, no matter what happens." Maya took a deep breath, her heart still pounding in her chest. She had spent so many years wondering if she would ever have the chance to find her mother, and now that chance was here. The fear still gripped her, but so did the hope. Maybe it wasn't too late. Maybe there was a way to heal the wounds that had been left behind. Ethan stepped closer to her, placing a reassuring hand on her shoulder. "Take your time, Maya," he said gently. "Whatever you decide, we're with you." She looked up at him, her eyes filled with uncertainty, but also something else, something new, a spark of possibility. For the first time in a long time, Maya felt like she had the power to make a choice. She didn't know what the future held, but for the first time, she felt like she could face it. With a shaky breath, she nodded. "I think I'm ready," she said quietly. "I want to see her." Ethan smiled softly, relief in his eyes. "We'll take it slow," he said, "one step at a time." Maya nodded again, the weight of the decision settling in her chest, but she didn't feel alone. She had made it this far, and with Ethan by her side, she knew she could keep going. The journey ahead was uncertain, but for the first time, she felt like she had the strength to face whatever came next. The day Maya had been waiting for finally arrived. Ethan had arranged everything: the trip, the meeting with the social worker, and the connection to the shelter. Maya sat in the back of the car, her hands clenched tightly in her lap. Her heart raced with a mixture of excitement and dread. She had imagined this moment 1,000 times in her mind, but now that it was real, she wasn't sure what to expect. She had dreamed of seeing her mother again, but she also feared what that reunion might bring. What if her mother had changed? What if she didn't want her anymore? Maya shook her head, trying to clear the thoughts from her mind. "Are you okay?" Ethan asked, glancing over his shoulder. Maya nodded, forcing a small smile, but she could feel her stomach turning. "I think so," she whispered. Ethan's eyes softened with understanding. "You don't have to do this if you're not ready. You've come a long way, Maya. We can always come back." Maya shook her head again, more firmly this time. "No, I'm ready. I have to do this." The car continued down the quiet highway, the trees and buildings blurring by as they approached the shelter. Maya's mind was racing, and her heart was pounding in her chest. She felt like she was walking into the unknown. The shelter was a small building, tucked away at the edge of a town. It wasn't grand or impressive, but to Maya, it felt like the doorway to her past. As they pulled up to the entrance, Maya took a deep breath. The air seemed heavier now, and she felt as if her entire future rested on what happened in the next few minutes. Ethan parked the car and turned to her. "You're not alone in this," he said, his voice steady and reassuring. "I'm here with you, okay?" Maya nodded, her throat tight. "Okay." The two of them walked into the shelter, where a receptionist greeted them. "Maya, this is Sarah," Ethan said. "She'll be the one to help us get in touch with your mom." Maya looked at Sarah, who gave her a warm smile, but Maya couldn't help feeling overwhelmed. This was it, the moment she had waited for, the moment that could change everything. "Are you ready?" Sarah asked gently, leading them to a small room at the back. Maya hesitated. She wasn't sure she was ready, but she didn't have a choice. Yes, she whispered. They sat in the small room, waiting. Maya felt the seconds stretch into hours as she sat there, her hands trembling. She had no idea what to expect, but she knew that whatever happened, her life was about to change. After what felt like an eternity, the door opened, and a woman stepped inside. Maya's heart skipped a beat. The woman was older than she remembered, but there was something about her that was familiar. Her hair was longer than it had been when Maya was younger, and there were lines on her face that spoke of years of hardship. But when their eyes met, Maya felt a shock of recognition. This was her mother. The woman stood there for a moment, her eyes wide, her mouth opening and closing as if she couldn't find the words. Maya's breath caught in her throat, and for a moment, neither of them spoke. Finally, her mother took a tentative step forward. "Maya?" she asked, her voice trembling. Maya couldn't speak at first. She just nodded, her eyes filling with tears. "I'm so sorry," her mother whispered, her voice breaking. "I've missed you so much." Maya felt a wave of emotion rush over her. The years of abandonment, the loneliness, the fear, it all came rushing back. She wanted to scream, to yell at her mother for leaving her, for not being there when she needed her most. But instead, all she could do was stand there, her heart torn between anger and a deep longing for the woman in front of her. "Why did you leave me?" Maya whispered, her voice shaking. Her mother's eyes filled with tears. "I didn't want to," she said softly, her voice full of regret. "I was lost. I didn't know how to take care of you. I was scared, and I didn't know what to do. But I've never stopped thinking about you, Maya. I've never stopped loving you." Maya's heart ached at her mother's words, but the anger and confusion didn't fade. "Why didn't you try harder?" Maya asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Her mother stepped closer, reaching out a trembling hand. "I didn't know how to fix things," she said, "but I'm here now. I want to be a part of your life again, if you'll let me." Maya looked at her mother, at the tears in her eyes, and for the first time in a long while, she allowed herself to feel something other than anger. She felt a small spark of hope. Maybe this could work. Maybe they could fix things, but it wasn't going to be easy. It was going to take time, and it was going to take trust. Maya took a deep breath and nodded slowly. "I don't know if I can forgive you," she said quietly, "but I'll try. I'll try to let you in." Her mother's face softened, and she reached out to gently hug her daughter. Maya stiffened at first, but then, slowly, she wrapped her arms around her mother. It wasn't a perfect moment. It wasn't the happy reunion Maya had dreamed about, but it was a start, and for the first time in a long time, Maya believed that maybe, just maybe, things could get better. The days that followed were a blur of new beginnings and old wounds. Maya's mother, Lisa, had returned into her life, but things were far from simple. Maya was still unsure, still holding on to the anger and hurt that had accumulated over the years. Every time they spoke, Lisa would apologize, offering explanations for her absence, but the words felt hollow at times. It was clear to Maya that her mother had tried to change, but the scars of abandonment were deep. Still, there were small moments, glimpses of the woman she had once loved, the woman who had been her world before everything had fallen apart. There were times when Maya would catch her mother staring at her with such longing in her eyes that it made Maya's heart ache. She wanted to forgive. She wanted to let go of the bitterness that had consumed her for so long, but forgiveness was a mountain, and Maya was still standing at its base. Lisa, sensing her daughter's hesitation, decided to take things slow. She didn't push Maya for answers or for affection. She simply showed up each day, trying to make up for lost time, whether it was cooking dinner together or sitting with her while Maya read quietly. The silence between them felt comfortable at times, though thick with unspoken words. One evening, after dinner, Maya found herself staring at her mother, watching the way her hands moved as she cleared the table. "Mom," Maya said softly, almost unsure if the words still felt right. Lisa paused, looking over her shoulder. Her face softened. "Yes, honey? I don't know how to do this," Maya whispered, her voice thick with emotion. "I don't know how to trust you again." Lisa set down the dish she was holding and turned to face her daughter. Her expression was full of understanding, and for the first time, Maya saw the pain in her mother's eyes, the same pain Maya had carried for so long. "I don't expect you to trust me right away, Maya. I don't even know if I deserve it," Lisa said, her voice breaking slightly. "But I'm here now. I want to be here for you, no matter what it takes." Maya felt the weight of her mother's words settle in her chest. It wasn't the answer she had been expecting, but it was the answer she needed. It was honest. It was real. And for the first time, Maya allowed herself to believe in the possibility of something better. That night, she lay awake in bed, the silence of the house pressing in on her. Her thoughts were a swirl of emotions: anger, hurt, hope, and fear. She wasn't sure how to balance them all, but she knew one thing. She couldn't keep living in the past. She had to let go. The next morning, she found herself in the kitchen, sitting at the table with her mother. Lisa was talking about her day, about how she was looking into a new job and trying to find a place to live. Maya listened, but she also found herself wondering if this was really the start of something new. Could she truly forgive? Could she truly heal? As if sensing her daughter's thoughts, Lisa placed a hand on Maya's. "I know this is hard, and I know I don't deserve your forgiveness. But I'm here, Maya. I'm not going anywhere." Maya met her mother's gaze. For the first time in a long time, she saw a future, a possibility. It wasn't perfect, but it was real. "I'm not ready to say everything's okay," Maya said, her voice soft but firm. "But I think I can try. For the first time, I think I can try." Tears welled up in Lisa's eyes, and she squeezed Maya's hand. "That's all I ask, honey. Just take it one day at a time." In that moment, Maya felt the weight of everything she had been carrying for years begin to lift, just a little. It wasn't an instant fix. There would be setbacks, and there would be moments when the pain resurfaced. But she knew, for the first time, that she didn't have to face it alone. She had her mother, and she had a chance for a future. Maya had come a long way from that night in the snowstorm, from the lonely streets where she had no one. Now, she had a chance to rebuild, to learn to trust again, and to heal. And though the journey was far from over, for the first time in a long time, Maya felt like she was finally moving forward. The day of the meeting with the social worker had come. Maya stood outside the building, her heart pounding in her chest, and the weight of everything she had been carrying seemed heavier now. It was one of those moments when everything felt like it was finally about to come crashing down, and she wasn't sure if she was ready for it. She looked at Ethan, who was standing beside her, his eyes full of understanding. "Are you ready?" he asked softly, his hand resting on her shoulder. Maya looked up at him, her gaze searching for something, anything that would make her feel less afraid. "I think so," she whispered, though her voice shook. Ethan nodded, offering her a reassuring smile. "You don't have to do this if you're not ready. But remember, you don't have to do it alone." Maya took a deep breath, gathering the courage to move forward. She had come so far, and there was no turning back now. She stepped into the building, feeling the cold air around her, but also the warmth that was beginning to bloom inside her. She wasn't alone anymore. They made their way down the hallway, the sound of their footsteps echoing in the quiet space. When they reached the room, Maya hesitated for a moment, her hand hovering over the doorknob. She could hear voices inside, soft and low. But there was one voice that stood out, a voice she recognized. Her heart skipped a beat. The door opened, and she stepped inside, her eyes meeting the gaze of the woman sitting across from her. It was her mother. Maya froze for a moment, her breath catching in her throat. The woman in front of her was older, more worn, but there was no mistaking the familiar features. It was Lisa, her mother, the woman who had once been everything to her, but also the one who had abandoned her. Lisa's eyes widened when she saw Maya, and for a moment, neither of them spoke. The room was filled with an almost unbearable silence. Maya could feel the tension in the air, thick and heavy, but it wasn't just the silence, it was the years of pain and hurt that had built up between them. Lisa stood up slowly, her hands trembling. "Maya," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "I never thought I would see you again." Maya stood still, her emotions swirling inside her. Anger, confusion, pain, all of it rushed to the surface. She had so many questions, so many things she wanted to say, but she couldn't find the words. Instead, she just stared at her mother, the woman who had walked out of her life. Ethan stepped forward, his presence a silent support. You don't have to say anything if you're not ready, he said gently. But Maya, your mother is here now, and this is a chance for you both to start again. Maya looked at Ethan, then back at her mother. Her mother's eyes were filled with regret. But there was something else there, too, something Maya hadn't expected to see. Sorrow. I've missed you so much, Lisa whispered, her voice breaking. I know I don't deserve your forgiveness, but I want to try. I want to make it right. Maya's heart ached, the words piercing through the wall she had built around herself. She wanted to scream, to ask her mother why she had left her, why she had abandoned her. But as she looked into Lisa's eyes, she saw the pain there, too. Why didn't you come back? Maya asked, her voice thick with emotion. Lisa swallowed hard, her eyes filling with tears. I wasn't ready, she said softly. I was lost, Maya. I didn't know how to be the mother you needed. I was too scared, and I made so many mistakes. But I want to be here for you now, if you'll let me. Maya felt a wave of conflicting emotions flood over her. Part of her wanted to run, to leave and never look back. But another part of her, a part she didn't recognize, wanted to stay. I don't know if I can forgive you, Maya said quietly, her voice shaking. But I want to try. I don't know what that means yet, but I'm willing to try. There was a long pause, and then Lisa stepped forward, her arms open. Maya hesitated for a moment, but something inside her told her this was the moment. This was the chance to heal. Slowly, she walked into her mother's embrace, the weight of years of pain starting to lift. It wasn't perfect. There were still so many things left unsaid, so many wounds that needed to heal. But for the first time, Maya felt like maybe, just maybe, this was the beginning of something new. The road ahead wouldn't be easy. There would be setbacks, and there would be more tears. But Maya knew that with her mother by her side, and with the support of people like Ethan, she wasn't alone anymore. And that, in itself, was a start. Weeks passed, and Maya found herself settling into a new routine. The house, once a strange and uncomfortable place, was starting to feel more like home. Lisa had been doing everything she could to show Maya that she was here to stay, but it wasn't always easy. The road to healing was long, and it seemed like every day Maya uncovered something new, feelings she had buried, memories she had long forgotten. Lisa was patient with her, never pushing too hard, always letting Maya set the pace. One evening, after dinner, Maya sat on the porch, staring out at the yard. It was quiet, the air cool and crisp, and for the first time in a long time, she felt at peace. She wasn't sure what the future held, but she knew she was no longer carrying the weight of her past alone. Ethan had come by earlier in the day to check on her, and he had been the same quiet support he always was. Maya had come to rely on his presence, and it comforted her to know she wasn't facing this journey alone. As she sat there, Lisa joined her, sitting quietly beside her. For a moment, neither of them spoke. They just looked out at the stars, the soft rustling of the trees filling the silence. Finally, Lisa turned to Maya, her voice gentle. I know we've talked a lot about the past, she said softly, but I want you to know that I'm here for the future too. We don't have to go through everything all at once. I just want to be here, to be a part of your life. Maya looked at her mother, the weight of her words sinking in. She had spent so many years questioning whether this day would ever come, whether she could ever trust again, whether she could forgive. She had spent so long looking at the past, at what had been lost, that she had forgotten to look at what was still right in front of her. Her mother. For the first time, Maya allowed herself to really see her. I don't know if I can ever forgive you for what happened, Maya said quietly, her voice steady, but full of emotion. But I do want you to be a part of my life. Lisa nodded, her eyes brimming with tears. I don't expect you to forgive me right now, Maya, she said softly. And I don't want to rush you into anything. All I can do is show you that I'm here, and I'm not going anywhere. Maya looked away for a moment, her gaze drifting to the stars. She wasn't sure what forgiveness would look like, or if it would even come at all. But one thing was clear, she wasn't alone anymore. And that was enough to start. A few days later, Maya made the decision to visit her old school. It had been a long time, and she wasn't sure how she would feel walking through those familiar halls again. But something in her told her that it was time. She and Lisa drove there together, the car ride quiet but comfortable. When they arrived, Maya took a deep breath before stepping out of the car. The familiar sight of the schoolyard made her stomach twist. She wasn't sure what she was hoping for, but something inside her told her this was the right thing to do. "I'm right here, Maya," Lisa said as they walked toward the entrance. "Take your time." Maya nodded, grateful for her mother's support. She entered the building, walking down the hallways she had once known so well. The memories came rushing back, both good and bad. She could hear the voices of the other kids, the laughter, the whispers, the moments that had shaped her. But something was different now. She wasn't the scared little girl who had walked these halls before. She was someone new, someone who had survived, who had fought, and who had the strength to move forward. She walked to her old locker, her fingers brushing against the cool metal. It was almost surreal, being back here, but as she stood there, she realized that she wasn't running away anymore. She wasn't hiding from her past. She was facing it, and she was ready to make peace with it. Lisa joined her, standing beside her with a quiet smile. Maya took a deep breath, letting it out slowly. "I'm ready," she said, her voice steady. "Ready for what?" Lisa asked, her voice full of curiosity. "Ready to move forward," Maya replied softly, turning to face her mother. "Ready to build something new." Lisa smiled warmly, pride filling her eyes. "I'm so proud of you, Maya. You've come so far." And for the first time in a long time, Maya smiled back, a genuine smile that reached all the way to her heart. She wasn't sure what the future held, but she knew one thing. She was no longer defined by her past. She was ready to start a new chapter, one where she could finally heal and build the life she had always deserved. Months passed since Maya's decision to move forward, and the changes in her life were undeniable. The bond between her and Lisa grew stronger every day. They spent time together, laughing, talking, and healing in ways neither of them had imagined. Lisa was still doing everything she could to make up for the time lost, but Maya had started to feel a sense of trust in her again. It wasn't perfect, and there were still moments of uncertainty, but Maya had learned to accept the imperfections of their relationship. Maya had also found herself thriving in ways she hadn't expected. She was doing well in school, making new friends, and even starting to dream about her future. Ethan continued to be a steady presence in her life, supporting her as she navigated this new chapter. There were still rough days, days when the weight of her past would come crashing back, but each day was another step toward healing. One evening, after dinner, Maya was sitting in the living room, flipping through an old photo album with Lisa. The photos were full of memories, some of them joyful, others painful, but as they turned the pages together, Maya began to see them in a new light. She wasn't the little girl from the past anymore. She was someone stronger. Someone who had been through so much but had made it out the other side. "I used to be so scared," Maya said softly, her fingers lingering on a picture of herself as a child, a shy smile on her face. "I thought I couldn't handle it, that I would always be lost." Lisa looked at her with tenderness, her voice quiet but filled with emotion. "You were never lost, Maya," she said. "You were always strong. You just needed to believe in it." Maya smiled, her heart swelling with a feeling of gratitude that she couldn't quite put into words. She had spent so much time feeling abandoned, forgotten, but now she felt seen. Now, she knew she wasn't alone. The next morning, Maya woke up to a letter on the kitchen table. It was from the social worker who had helped connect her with Lisa. The letter was brief, but it contained some important news. They had found a way for Maya to meet with her biological father, someone she had never met, and who had been absent from her life since she was very young. Maya had mixed feelings about the letter. She had heard stories of her father growing up, but they were fragmented, and none of them painted a picture of the man she had imagined. There was anger in her heart, but there was also curiosity. Was he someone she could forgive? Was he someone she could get to know? She wasn't sure, but she knew that meeting him was another step toward understanding her past, another step in her healing journey. She told Lisa about the letter later that day, her voice uncertain. "I don't know if I'm ready for this," she admitted. "I don't even know what I'm supposed to feel." Lisa sat beside her, her hand resting gently on Maya's. "You don't have to be ready for everything at once," she said, her voice warm and comforting. "This is your journey, Maya. You take it at your own pace." Maya nodded, feeling a sense of calm settle over her. She didn't have to have all the answers right now. She was allowed to take things one step at a time. The days that followed were filled with preparations for the meeting. Maya was nervous, but there was also something deep inside her that felt hopeful. She hadn't had a relationship with her father, but this was her chance to understand a piece of her story. Ethan came by to offer his support, and Lisa was there every step of the way, encouraging Maya to take the time she needed. Finally, the day of the meeting arrived. Maya stood outside the building, her heart racing. Her mind was a whirlwind of thoughts, questions, and doubts. She wasn't sure what would happen when she walked inside, but she knew she was ready to face whatever came next. As she walked into the room, her biological father was already sitting there, his eyes focused on the door. When he saw Maya, he stood up, his face filled with a mixture of surprise and uncertainty. He was older than she had imagined, with lines of age and regret etched on his face. But there was something else in his eyes, something that told Maya he was as nervous as she was. "Maya?" he asked quietly, his voice rough. She nodded slowly, unsure of what to say. I'm your father," he said, his words thick with emotion. Maya felt a lump form in her throat. She had heard so much about this man, but standing in front of him, the words didn't come easy. She didn't know how to feel. She didn't know what was right. But as she stood there, looking into his eyes, she realized that she didn't have to have all the answers. She didn't have to know how this story would end. All she had to do was take the first step. "I'm here," Maya said quietly, "and I'm willing to try," and that was enough. It was a small step, but it was one that Maya knew would bring her closer to understanding her past and forging a path toward the future she had always dreamed of. The journey Maya had embarked on had come full circle. The pain, the anger, the confusion, everything that had defined her past was now something she could look at, not as something that controlled her, but as part of her story. She had faced the hardest parts of her life head-on, and though it hadn't been easy, she had come out stronger on the other side. Her relationship with Lisa had healed, not without its bumps, but it was real. For the first time, Maya saw her mother not as the person who had left her behind, but as someone who was trying, just like her, to make things right. The meeting with her biological father had been difficult, full of unanswered questions and emotions that Maya wasn't ready to fully process. But she had done it. She had taken the step to open that door. It wasn't perfect, and she didn't know what would come of it, but the simple act of showing up had been the beginning of another new chapter. Maya was no longer defined by what had happened to her. She was no longer the girl left in the cold, abandoned and afraid. She had found the strength to move forward, to build the life she wanted. It wasn't about forgetting the past. It was about understanding it and choosing to heal. One afternoon, she sat with Lisa in the living room, a soft breeze coming in from the open window. The world felt quieter now, not as overwhelming as it once had. "Mom," Maya said, her voice steady, "I think I'm ready to start thinking about what's next." Lisa turned to her, a smile forming on her face. "What do you mean?" she asked, her eyes filled with curiosity. Maya hesitated for a moment, then spoke with newfound confidence. "I think I want to go to college. I want to see what I can do with my future. I know I have a long way to go, but I want to try." Lisa's smile grew wider, her eyes filled with pride. "I'm so proud of you, Maya," she said, her voice thick with emotion. "You've come so far, and I know you can do anything you set your mind to." Maya's heart swelled at her mother's words. She had spent so much time doubting herself, questioning if she was capable of more. But now, with the love and support of Lisa, and the small but steady foundation she had built for herself, Maya felt like she could take on the world. That night, as she lay in bed, she thought about how far she had come. From the cold streets, from the darkness of loneliness, to this moment of hope, of possibility. She wasn't sure what the future held, but for the first time, she wasn't afraid. She was ready. Ready to face whatever came her way. Ready to embrace the life she deserved. She closed her eyes, a soft smile on her face, knowing that she was no longer defined by her past but by the choices she made today and the courage she had found inside herself. Tomorrow was a new day, and for the first time, Maya felt that anything was possible. In this powerful and emotional journey, we follow the life of Maya, a young girl who faces the harsh realities of abandonment, loneliness, and self-doubt. Her story is a testament to resilience, healing, and the strength to overcome adversity. From the cold streets to the warmth of a new beginning, Maya's path shows how love and support can transform even the darkest situations. As Maya navigates her complicated relationship with her estranged mother, Lisa, and confronts the past she's tried to forget, we see the growth of a young girl who is learning to trust, forgive, and embrace a future full of possibilities. Maya's journey is a true reflection of the power of human connection and the courage it takes to face one's fears. This is not just a story about a girl and her mother, but a representation of the challenges many face when trying to rebuild their lives. The story unfolds in a way that brings forth the most heartfelt emotions, showing the beauty in healing and moving forward. Maya's encounter with her biological father brings an unexpected twist, as she starts to piece together the fragments of her past and find closure. These black stories shed light on the complex nature of family, forgiveness, and self-empowerment. Maya's experience serves as a reminder that even in the most challenging circumstances, hope and change are possible. This narrative, like many black stories, highlights the power of perseverance, trust, and the determination to rise above hardship. In the end, Maya's story is one of triumph, a young girl who once thought she was alone, now ready to take control of her future. Maya's journey is one of healing, strength, and courage, as she embraces the love and opportunities that await her. These black stories offer a profound insight into the human spirit, showing that with love, support, and resilience, we can all find our way to a better tomorrow.